Hello and welcome to another episode of Alte Herren. My name is Rob Runacres and as ever I'm joined by Hans Jodlind, who will tell us about this episode.
Okay, yes, today we will take a look at some fighting, a new test of a new fighting format in competition. We did it at Battle of the Bridge, which was an event hosted by Örebro Hema here in Sweden. And you will see me fight Christopher Holm. You will also see Herren fight Olle Jansson. You want to start the films, or should I talk a little bit more about the fighting?
Well, I mean, what's so special about this? Is this just another longsword, contest with the Nordic League stroke swordfish rules, or is there something different?
No, this is something completely different. You will not see judges standing around with flags or anything. You will not see a referee break when he sees a hit and then send the fighters back into the corners. Nothing like that. This was a test to see if you could have a fight with a more flow into it. So it's gonna look a little bit more like a boxing match. I think the referee will only come in and say and separate the fighters when the exchange has gone too long, for instance, and the judges standing around and they give out points as the fight goes on, and we don't know the score or anything. So it's a really interesting test, and I must say I liked it very much.
Okay, well, let's watch the first one, which is with you, I believe, and Christopher Holm.
Yeah.
I'll probably ask you in a bit more detail what's going on after the fight.
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and see. I'm in black, and Christopher is in red pants and white jacket. And here we go. So as you see, the ref is standing right next to us.
Right.
And in the background you see Axel and Jesper Christiansen doing scoring, and right behind me here on this side of the mat was Carl and Dennis doing scoring. And
okay, so no one on the sides.
No one on the sides. No one on the sides. Okay. This is it. So in this rule set we scored exchanges, not hits.
Okay.
So this meant that a fencer could win an exchange clearly and get 2 points, or he could win not clearly and get 1 point. And
okay. You're being quite brutal to Christopher, I notice. I mean, you punch him
I know. I don't like him that much, you know. I had to. I'm much more active the first minute of this fight. Then I realized that I haven't done any longsword for like 6 months, and I had no cardio whatsoever. So it was actually quite horrible experience. Yeah. No, I had no cardio. So it was overall a horrible experience for me. The other guys, they could do this for like do this in a couple of fights and just go on and on and on. I was dying after 1 minute with this home. But as you see, you can score a point by entering, land a hit or more hits, and then kind of control the rest of the exchange or move out from the rest of the exchange. And to get a clear win, you need 2 solid strikes, 2 shallow strikes, or 1 deep strike. Mm-hmm. And
deep strike being torso or head, I take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah, it was a 2-minute fight. They actually asked us if we wanted to fight 3 minutes or 2 minutes. I think I was very fast on saying 2 minutes. That's enough.
We're getting old, mate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first question on that is, regardless of what you feel about the Nordic League or the Swordfish rule set, it's very clear when there is a stop, and the scoring is demonstrably clear. Mm-hmm. What you've got there is 2 guys who are exchanging, but at times, of course, because it's ongoing, it's not immediately clear what's going on, and it could lead, I suppose, to a bit of a mess. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it could, but I also, for me, it was actually kind of an interesting and fun experience, because I didn't have to focus on flags or finding the right angles for some judges to see what I do, or I didn't have to think about any points or scoring. I just had to focus on doing, fence the best I could, and it actually brought out some better fencing for me. Actually, I think I enjoyed it very much. But as you said, I don't think anyone can just go in and do it. You have to be kind of you have to be aware of what type of fencing what you want here.
This was very much my next point, was that we've spoken before, I think, about the culture of fencing and what's needed between two fighters, and obviously the sort of Scandinavian scene, I guess in particular Sweden, has got a certain culture in the longsword, at least, which lends itself to a more of a partnered fencing style, shall we say, in that environment. What happens then if someone else wants to join in who perhaps doesn't come from that, who has more of a sporting background, who's just going to go for maximum points? I mean, obviously in a competition, one would hope that they would go for a good hit, but ensure that they're not hit in return. However, we have seen increasingly a lot of people in certain disciplines come in and quite hard and get the first hits, or try to get a flurry of hits. Does this style of competition encourage messy fighting, or is it that you need to have a culture before you go in?
I think you need to have a culture before going in, actually. And I think this type of fencing, this type of format, competition format, is really good, because you can very easily start it in the clubs right away. Because this is kind of full contact sparring, but just have a couple of guys standing beside and kind of score the exchange, and then have a talk after the sparring session. This is what we saw, to the fencers, and there you have it. And that's the way how to form this type of fencing culture. And I think it has to start in the clubs. And but I hope and I think that clubs will actually start doing this more and more. And I think we will see this more and more in also in events, in more, maybe it will turn into more serious competitions with this format.
Do you feel though that it's very subjective by the judges? I mean, all right, you've got 4 judges watching, but they're having to see a flow, so you're seeing a lot of things coming in, so there's more to miss as were. And I suppose it's reliant a little bit more on the interpretation of what's going on. So one could argue that it is more subjective, and therefore judging may be more difficult. There's going to be less people able to do that.
Yeah, I think it will be a little bit more difficult for judges, but as long as we have experienced fencers taking care of the judging on the sides, I think it's actually pretty good, because I have a feeling this is more, how should I say, historical, or something that you let the experienced instructors, experienced fencer judge your fighting, so I think this is a very, very good thing. Actually, you just let them. I do my fencing as best as I can, and then I let the brilliance and the skill of the more experienced ones just tell me, no, this is what we saw, this is what you did well, this is what you did not so well. So yeah, that's my experience, how I felt it when I was fighting.
Okay, just a final question on the flow of how this goes. Obviously, when in the normal, I'll start that again. In things like swordfish, long point, I'm a Rome, and so on, when a point is scored, everything stops. The clock may or may not stop, but basically fighters go back to corner, as you said. Does this lead to a more exhausting experience, therefore? Because in some ways you get a little breather, But on the other hand, you get to flow more, don't you? So it's more like that you can settle into it more. Do you feel that one is more exhausting than the other?
It was horrible the whole way through. I couldn't breathe at all. Actually, so that's one negative thing about this. You have to have some cardio because it's an ongoing fight. It's like a boxing match. You have to be kind of on the toes mentally and physically all the time. Although it's not as hysterical as the other format could be sometimes when you kind of you time in and then you go and the people just rush in and become suicidal. This was not it here, So I think it had more flow, but it also was a little bit more draining, but because you didn't have those breathers, as I said. But I think it was good.
I think it's going to be interesting seeing how this works with those fencers who come out with their sort of, they come out and do one explosive action to get the hit.
Suicidal stuff or something like that?
It could be termed suicidal. It could be termed that their belief is to try and get the maximum points quickly, or get it hit in first. I mean, for me, I'm enjoying the idea of basically, you may have that initial flurry of blows, but then you start to settle into the fight. And you can see someone who starts to control and fence. It's not about running in and belting someone.
Yeah, I agree. It will be interesting to see. The more we see this, then we will of course see more types of fencers, more styles going into this, and see how they deal with it. I'm just looking forward to see more of this. Actually, I'm looking forward to do more of it because it was a really, really fun experience.
So, do you think it's going to perhaps aid those people who are perhaps more stylistic, more technical in some ways, than people who are able to accumulate points?
Yeah, maybe they will enjoy competition fencing a little bit more to go into this, because you didn't have to think about flags, points, secretariats, people, that kind of the format that we usually have. So this was just go in, enjoy your fencing, and try to win every exchange, or try to do your best technical fencing. Then that's it, and then let someone else score it. But I think this could be a very good way to have the people who usually kind of shy away from competition to actually take a step in and try this format, because it's more like your regular sparring, but you're being watched from the side by experienced fencers.
Okay, let's have a look at the next video then.
Yeah, please. It will be Ole Jansson from Uppsala and Håvard Herren from Norway. Ole from Sweden will be in black, and Håvard is in white. Okay, so here they go in. As you see, they move in really quickly and have a lot of energy. Both Håvard and Ole are in great shape, technical fencers. You're gonna see some really. You see here.
Well, you see, for me, this is interesting because you've got two guys who are basically running in, and they don't seem to be being entirely cautious, and they're the referees having to separate them.
Yeah, separate them, and now the fight kind of settles a little bit, but they wanted to move in and have this kind of full motion all time. This was actually the first fight, so I don't think anyone of us who was fighting knew exactly how to do this at first. But we tried. This was the first fight, so they started off really, really quickly with fast moves, fast attacks, and everything. So, but they are very controlled in what they do. So they don't fight in the, what we say, suicidal way, or just going for points. They actually try to go in, dominate, and do the best they can, and they are, yeah. And there you can see in the background Carl and Dennis scoring. And here we see Jesper Johnson to the left, scoring with excellence. Then you have the rep here.
So sorry, is that Dennis Lundqvist in the hipster kit?
Yes, Dennis Lundqvist. Yes.
Carl is in his hipster kit. Okay.
Yes, of course. And I don't know if I said that, but we actually fought each other. So it was a little tournament with 4 people. So we had 3 fights each. And my first fight was with Christopher, second was with Alte, and my third was with Howard. You can find all these fights if you go to Axel Peterson's YouTube channel. You can find all these fights if you want to go in and see how it was done. And yeah, I'm only feel bad because my cardio was absolutely horrible. So I realized, oh my God, I have to go out and do some jogging. You know?
I think something I observed in the second fight very much. And guys, if you do watch this is an observation. It's not criticism of how you fight or anything. But both came in and were, whilst they were not wild, they were attempting to score. I didn't notice them settling or moving around and trying to control the opponent's blades. It was coming in quite as much as one might expect that this is perhaps intimating. Would you agree with that, or do you think I'm being too harsh?
No, I agree with that. They came in with kind of the same, both of them had the same kind of attitude. And then what happens then is both you will clash. When I moved in, when I fought, I always fight very, very defensive. I go in and then I stop and take my time and try to look at my opponent, and Christopher is more active and more a little bit more aggressive. So our fight looked completely different than this last fight. But I also think it was comes from the fact that we hadn't done this before. So this was the first fight. When I watched this, me and Christopher said, okay, they do it like this. I don't think we will fight like this. You know, it was a bit different to see that. But after a while, they settled into another kind of
exactly. They started to go into it. I think as tiredness, well, not tiredness, but as the flow comes in. I think one of the questions I'm trying to get to, which it's not a particularly popular opinion, but I just want to be the devil's advocate on this.
Go ahead.
You've got people who've trained in a certain rule set and in a certain mental outlook, to go and get those points and so on, and however controlled and technical they may be, they're going in for it. And that's what struck me very much in that second fight. That they were going in for it until they started setting for the flow. So do you feel that this is going to take a little while, if this competition style is reused, it's going to take a little while for people to adjust to this?
It might, but if you start in your clubs, then we bring it to the kind of to the events and do it. I think if people start to just have this kind of attitude and in the club, so we kind of form a culture around it, then I think it will be easier to settle it, to kind of form a new way of doing this type of little competition. I don't think it should be used in big competitions, but you know, invitational ones and stuff like that, or if you want to
I'm going to disagree with you there, Hans. I think it should be used. I think it should be used in big competitions, not as a replacement, but certainly as an add-on. I mean, we've talked about this for many times about the way that certain rule sets lead to certain things, and I quite like the idea of having alternatives to shake things up. And I also like the idea, I suppose, of an Alte Herren, of having the experienced fencers like Carl and Axel and so on, watching things and being able to assess it using their experience rather than a purely point-based thing. I mean, I think actually this is interesting. We haven't really addressed, we haven't actually answered why this. What was the thinking behind doing this?
The whole thinking behind this was that Carl and Örebro Hema wanted to have an event where we tried out new formats for tournaments, new rule sets actually. So this was one thing. We did more. We had We had a tournament. I think all in all, I think we had like 13 or 15 tournaments over a weekend, short tournaments. But we tried different rules. We had one when the fencers started from the bind, which was really, really cool. Because they couldn't, when I as a referee counted down to 3, 2, 1, go. From go, you could move away and start fencing, or you could move in and take control of the bind. That was really cool because there was a lot of stress in that to stay in that bind from the start. We also had, we also had all the mats were more rectangular. We used, instead of having like a 8x8, we had, I think, 8x6 or so, and we only had one referee and one judge on one side, on each side. So one referee on one side and one judge on one side, and we all, to score the point.
I get the experimentation, and that's always good, but in many ways that's changing some of the physical parameters. What's interesting me about these fights is that it's a different philosophy, if you will, that's being applied.
Yeah.
Why? What's brought this on?
I think we have talked in Sweden a long time, because Sweden has had the Nordic Fencing League, Swordfish, we have Vasaslaget, we have national championships for 3 years or so. So we have had a lot of tournaments with kind of the same rule set. So, but we also, the last 2 years or so, we have started to talk about we need to try out new things, new formats to move on, to bring out that good fencing, because the fencing we see these days, as you said, sometimes it's starting to get it gets into more like just doing that initial strike, more suicidal fencing, and it's moving away. It's moving towards something where we feel like maybe this is not where we want to go. Maybe we should take it back, do something else, try out something else. You have to find the core again, what we want to do with historical fencing, actually. So I think it's just I don't know. It's something that we have talked about for a long time, actually, to do something else differently.
Do you think, and obviously you can't represent the whole of the community on this, but do you think there is a feeling that...
Easily, come on.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to be nice, come on. Okay, but, all right, well, do you feel that basically it's showing that there's a frustration that whilst the rule sets are easily exportable and people can, from out of the Nordic area, attend a certain set of things, do you feel that some of the culture is not being exported and there's a frustration there? Because what really interests me is that, you talk about the Swedish culture of fencing and so on, and there can be criticism that a lot of the historical side as it comes through, it's been very competition based, but on the flip side, you've got a great deal of mutual support in Sweden, which really doesn't happen in a lot of areas. In certain things, all right, you do see it in France and Spain's brilliant for a lot of the mutual support. There's politics everywhere, I understand, but the sort of the culture in trying to improve fencing through competition, it has been, in my opinion, at times overshadowed by the desire to win in competition. And is this sort of an expression of that frustration?
Maybe it is actually. But I think that what we have seen the last few years is that fencing has looked like this. That you go to the club, you learn some things, but everything moves to up here on the triangle, and this is like the competition, winning those medals, blah blah blah. Instead, we should have, like, I don't know, that competitions are important, yes, but they're just a little piece of the puzzle to learn about historical fencing. And I think that's one thing. But I also think that we in Sweden have a very, very functional way of doing this. We have done this so many years now. We've organized. We know how to do this big tournaments and big events like this. So some people might actually there's a lot of fencers who you can see when they fence, it's like yeah, they go to competition, they do it, but they want something else. They want to, you know, test new grounds, do something else in competition. And competition is just so new. And I think it would be bad if we just get stuck into one way of doing it. And this is the way how to do competition fencing. This is the way how to do tournaments. It's better to rip that open, rip it up, and just what else can we do in competition? Can we add new stuff? Can we do, you know, like you have like triathlons? Where are the competitions in format, like solo drills and stuff like you know, like kata, things like that? Where are those? I would love to see those.
I think it's I mean it really does strike at the heart of a lot of debate at the moment, because you see a lot of people are lauded for their competitions, and you know, it's that accumulation of medals, and they're lauded because they've got lots of medals, but regardless of the quality of competition, it doesn't matter, they've got more medals, this is what's important. And of course HEMA arose partly of wanting to have a more martial technique, not just competition, or even some people have moved away from it. I think the other thing is that something I hear with increasing regularity, which irks me a lot, is yeah, they're good, but you know, they're not really that good unless they compete. So you've got these brilliant fencers who don't want to compete, and they're sort of damned into second rate or third rate because they don't compete. And I think that's more of an indictment of the culture, or some of the cultures within HEMA.
Yeah,
I don't know if you think anything along those lines.
No, I think I agree. I think you're right there. I absolutely do. But I think this type of competition would actually benefit that, and it would just bring out more great fencing actually. So I think this was a great experience. We're going to do it more in Sweden.
I'm very excited by this actually. I think this is something that could open and broaden the areas, as you say. So I look forward to your increased cardio aiding your resurgence. You're the guy that won the 2013 Swordfish, and people forget that.
Oh yeah, I know. Even
you were fit at one point.
Huh?
You were fit at one point.
Yeah, I was. Maybe I was actually. Maybe I was. What I want to say is, this tournament, this competition we did now was with longsword. I don't know how it would be like with rapier dagger, if you could get the same type of flow, because you know, rapier dagger have a sometimes you get entangled, blah blah blah, and maybe that the referee could go in with the staff and say, okay, break and take us out, and then you move in again. I don't know. It would be very interesting to see this format with rapier dagger.
I think it depends on the style. I mean, it's something. You see, my best fights that I enjoy the most aren't in competition, because the person I'm fighting with is more interested in the problem solving with the rapier and dagger than the accumulation of points. The rapier and dagger for me, as you know, is a frustration because it can be a very beautiful form, but it comes in like, you know, windmill fighting like this.
Exactly.
I think it would benefit from it, but again, it would take a cultural change to this. Yeah. I think it's something where destreza forms would probably be better, because the attitude and the application, at least insofar as we're seeing displayed, is more about that flow. There's a cultural aspect behind it. Having said that, there are a number of great Italian fighters who I think would benefit with this, with dagger, or indeed with things like cape or single, of course, or anything like that. It would be nice to see some elegant swordplay. This is not to say you don't see it in other competitions, but it does. Unfortunately, I think rapier and dagger and single rapier does lend itself to more of that that fast attack to try and accumulate those points.
I agree. So let's see what happens in the future.
Let's see what happens.
Cool.
Okay, Hans, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.